Today's dedication is for Terax, who gave me a very generous 1 year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon.
I am fully expecting Obeka to be the most popular commander from Thunder Junction Mountain Railroad, or whatever the hell this set's called. All we want to do with this commander really is hit with it and abuse what would normally be upkeeps only balanced cards, landing 3, 4, 5 additional upkeeps on your turn and everything that comes with it. So let's look at the fun stuff first with the Upkeep Matters cards. Everyone always mentions the Monarch cycle of cards in these lists, and they're great, but the problem is they're all north of 4 mana for the most part. And you can't slip too many 4+ mana costs into your deck in a colour combination like Grixis that isn't the best at ramping. With that in mind, I have been selective with which Monarch cards I've included because there is a little bit of a direct damage / drain sub-theme here. Court of Ambition is life loss and discard. Court of Embereth is a bunch of 3/1 knights that you actually get to keep amazingly. And Court of Ire is direct damage. Obviously you get the card draw from the Monarch here as well if you actually are able to keep hold of it. Might as well stick with the Upkeep Matters card draw enchantments then. Call of the Ring will cost you life, so it's not necessarily the best thing, but it will be really easy to level up the ring, which will make Obeka difficult to block. And we'll go over making Obeka more difficult to block a bit more later on. Gravestorm is a means of graveyard hate, but hopefully we end up with some card draw from it too once we've emptied the yards. Obviously this is more likely with the more upkeeps we get, and Patient Rebuilding will probably miss more often than we'd like without the additional upkeeps, but again, that's the deck, and we hope to draw plenty of cards off this one. There's some artifacts that care about upkeeps and even provide some card advantage as well. Midnight Clock will eventually be traded out for a wheel and refill the hand, while a similar card in Replicating Ring will multiply and multiply the more upkeeps we manage to cheat. Then these two swords from the famous cycle not only buff Obeka, but make it easier for her to get through blockers as well. Mainly here for card draw on the Fire and Ice, and ramp on the Feast and Famine. I have tried to insert as much card advantage as possible in the deck, and it continues with these creatures. Twilight Prophet will drain your opponents as well as give you cards, and Bonehorde Dracosaur is likely both ramp and body straight into play, which takes us nicely into more creature value in the form of the initiative mechanic. You can sprint your way through dungeons with this commander, and the quicker you complete a dungeon, the sooner you can take advantage of cards like Rilsa Rail, which will give you a +5 buff to power and Death Touch. The more power, the more upkeeps. With enough buffs you can get straight through the Undercity in one attack. Other initiative cards include Caves of Chaos Adventurer and Ravenloft Adventurer. There are more initiative cards, but they're not all available on Magic Online for whatever reason, and I have tried to insert multiple examples of different mechanics where Obeka works anyway. One example of which is Suspend. Rousing and Inspiring Refrain will net us a lot of cards and mana, as suspended counters are removed during every upkeep, but this particular cycle jumps in and out of Suspend upon every resolution, so you can really abuse these cards over and over and over again. Cumulative Upkeep will often be a downside for us, especially with more upkeeps, but with Herald of Leshrac, we get to tilt the entire table by stealing away their lands, mainly focusing on the colours that will allow them to remove our stuff. And I suppose the no particular category section continues here with multiple 5/5 flyers from a single Dragon Master Outcast. We're not flooded with creatures in this deck, so even as mere blockers these will come in handy. Darksteel Reactor is pretty poor outside of infinite combos, but the fact that it's indestructible means I don't mind leaving it in play and slowly ticking it up over 4 turns or so. If it does, we win on the spot. And I was going to include another couple of Chaos cards, but decided on just the one that would likely benefit us way more than anyone else at the table. With Gate to the Ether, they get one thing, we get 6. And before we get into buffing and sneaking Obeka through, I just want to quickly mention that we do have a couple of Reanimator cards in here as well, with Virtue of Persistence and Portal to Phyrexia, both of which act as removal as well as reanimating lots and lots of creatures. Alright, so we get Obeka out, we want to buff it and then get it through. So how do we do that? This ring cycle is something that a lot of players have been talking about, but I don't like having to pay for the activated abilities on some of them, so I've just decided to use this one as a haste enabler. You want to be buffing Obeka before she attacks, not afterwards. If it greatly buffs the commander with plus counters, then so be it, but I'm not assuming that Obeka will be around for much longer once we've cast it. We have the Swords of Fire and Ice and of Feast and Famine, like I mentioned previously, and there's Blackblade Reforged as well. Not the best without land ramping Grixis, but we don't need massive buffs for Obeka to go off. Hammer of Nizarn gives us a +2 buff to power, indestructible, and cheats equip costs, everything we value in this deck. So there's a few means of buffing the commander, but we still can't necessarily get through. Trailblazer's Boots makes us unblockable when there is a non-basic land in play. Vorak Battle Horns pairs superbly with Menace, making our commander unblockable for only 3 mana in total. And Whisper Silk Cloak is always a bit of a risky one because the Shroud hurts our opponents, but it means we can't equip further things onto Obeka either. So it may be that we have to waste mana to and re-equip the cloak during the mid-game. I think it's best that we're just careful playing this out for 5 mana once we're ready for a big attack. The background Sword Coast Sailor hopes to see that we don't have the highest life total. If that's the case, we can swing in at whoever that is, unimpeded, and grab our additional upkeeps. The only thing to cover that's of any interest now is ramp. We've got the usual culprits, but unique to this deck are cards like Generous Plunderer, which gives us lots of treasure and allows us to spread the other treasure throughout the rest of the board. This could backfire, but it could also act as a means of getting attention away from us in a kind of group hug style. Depends on your play group really. As foretold, we'll get plenty of counters on it and means you can cheat in pretty much any spell you want once a turn. Another card we'll have to be careful with is Descent into Avernus, as it will deal damage to us as well. But it can be a good way to finish off your opponents depending on their life totals. Like I said, we've still got typical ramp in the deck like Talismans and Dockside etc, but these are just some noteworthy inclusions. You can check the full deck list in the description below, along with a link to Patreon where you can join those who support the channel monetarily. Big thank you to those of you who do that already, and I hope you enjoyed the deck tech. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.